Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking the Barrier. Today I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. She is a proud North Dakotan. She served last year as Miss Rodeo North Dakota. She is a children's book author and a news host and anchor most recently. Not only that, she is one of the most well-spoken individuals I know. Please join me in welcoming Miss Lindsey Miller. Lindsey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I've been keeping up with your podcast since, oh goodness, I don't know how long. And it is just an honor to get to grace kind of the Breaking the Barrier kind of stage, I guess, and to get to chat with you this morning too.
Yes, and it's a Friday morning at the time that we're recording this, and I had to refocus a little bit because it's just so fun to get to catch up with Lindsey and catch up with people from last year. But for those who are unfamiliar with your story, lay the groundwork a little bit, shed some light on your upbringing in agriculture and rodeo in North Dakota.
Absolutely. So I hail from Flaxton, North Dakota. Grew up on a family farm. We did ranch when I was very, very little as well. Always been a proud ag kid, rodeo girl. I rodeoed in high school. I was a part of our rodeo club at Dickinson State where I went to college. And then last year I served as Miss Rodeo North Dakota 2023, like you said. That was kind of the pinnacle of my rodeo queen career. I believe I was a rodeo queen for roughly 8 years. So that was a wonderful journey that I gained so many life skills from, and really just hope that young ladies who are kind of teetering on whether or not to participate, go ahead and do it. That's really kind of segued into my job and in where I'm at now. I all the public speaking I've gained and just the confidence to be in front of a camera and to know that what I say can be inspiring and can mean something has been a truly wonderful thing to just really hone in on, and now serve, as an anchor for KMOT TV in Minot. We're an NBC affiliate, and I also serve as a reporter for them too. So it's just been a great journey throughout life, kind of bringing those ag morals and values into rodeo queening and now into my career. And I just think there's so much that can be gained from that industry.
For sure. Well, one of the cornerstones of your not only rodeo queen experience, but also your professional experience is being the author of the book, The Girl in the Lime Green Jeans. Could you share a little bit about that book and how it came to be?
Yes. So, like I said, last year with me serving as Miss Rodeo North Dakota and having a long time as a rodeo queen, I started to realize some things. First and foremost, I realized that there was not a book out there that educated folks about really rodeo queens, or even in some ways their ties into rodeo and how they become a rodeo queen. And being that I am so big on education and I am a bibliophile at heart, I, in high school, worked alongside our librarian as kind of like a co op work study type of extra credit. And I found a great passion in taking note of what really sparked and inspired kids to remain engaged, but also to learn something from story time. And I was really kind of in the height of my rodeo queen career, meaning I'd kind of found a platform. I'd really honed in on my confidence, started to really decide on, what my look was, for lack of better words. And I just had this thing on my heart to create a rodeo queen book. I'd always wanted to be an author. In the third grade, I had written a short story and won first place for my grade statewide that year. And that just sparked that one day I wanted to be an author. I didn't know of what. And then this opportunity just kind of presented itself, and I started honing away in my cactus notebook. The character's name changed, but the story remained the same. And it was to highlight a young girl who lacks confidence and just really passion and just kind of feels out of place, tall, gangly, kind of awkward. And then she finds herself becoming a rodeo queen due to her sister becoming a rodeo queen first, and her seeing the importance of a job of a rodeo queen and how cool the industry is to be a part of. And that just kind of was a 5-year journey. I started, I think, as a junior in high school. Then finally, in 2022, and even 2021, I'd finished the manuscript. I'd found a publisher, I found an illustrator, and then it came to fruition in November of 2022, prior to me serving as Miss Rodeo North Dakota in 2023. And if I'm being quite transparent, it shares my story of how I became a rodeo queen. In high school, I was active in a lot of different things, but I always lacked confidence. And in some ways, I lacked passion. I knew I was high school rodeoing and youth rodeoing, and I loved it. And I knew my passion and kind of my purpose in life was in rodeo. but I knew it was more than competing. And so it was like that corner edge of a puzzle that it if you try to put like the top one in the bottom, it doesn't quite work, but sometimes it might if you really fudge it. And that's kind of where I was at. And so finally, I decided to turn that quarter piece and put it in the upper corner as a rodeo queen. And my world was enlightened. I found confidence within myself. I found a passion and a purpose. And that was just something I really wanted to share with those around me, and especially on a state and national level as Miss Rodeo North Dakota. So that's where the girl in lime green jeans came to be.
I love it. Well, Lindsay has impeccable style and even more so a whole wardrobe of lime green pieces. Today, I wore a lime green shirt if you're watching this episode recording on YouTube in honor of the occasion. What I'm really curious to learn more about is the publishing process, because it's one thing to get all your thoughts on paper, but it seems like a pretty daunting task to go through the hoops of finding an illustrator, publishing, distribution, you name it. Talk about those logistical pieces.
That was kind of the biggest, I think, obstacle I faced. I mean, it was cool to like come up with this story about a rodeo queen and want to share it with the world. But then it was like, okay, you wrote it on paper, but like it's not a real book. And so I started kind of on that process. The first thing was finding an illustrator, and I was very, very particular in what I wanted this character to look like. I had this vision. I'd actually had one of our good family friends who my mom went to high school with her daughter made the character that is the girl in lime green jeans as a doll way back at the beginning of this journey. And I just kept thinking of that girl and was like, that's how I want her to look, but very like cartoony, but not, Dr. Seuss, kind of somewhere in the middle there. And I tried to go through some local art students at the college I was attending, but then COVID hit and we were trying to communicate via email, and it kind of got lost. And anybody I'd reached out to at the college, they just were not super interested. They're like, yeah, well, and they didn't quite fit the style that I was wanting. Well, my wonderful rodeo queen mother that she was on Etsy. She says, looking at rodeo queen clothes. But I think she was secretly looking for an illustrator, because one day I get a link to this illustrator who matches exactly kind of the vibe of what I was seeking. And she's like, this seems to be what you were talking about. Is this like, would this be somebody you could reach out to? And I did. And so throughout COVID and then even into 2021, I communicated with them via email, and we went through that whole process and they got those completed for me. And then, yeah, I'd say early 2022, once we got all that kind of situated, I started seeking some publishing companies. And being that I was a smaller author who didn't have a lot of capital or income to make something like that happen with, a lot of dollars amounts, I then kind of sought out what was best for me, and I came across Palmetto Publishing. And so I sent them my manuscript and my illustrations, and they were wonderful to work with. They put it all together for me. It was a step-by-step process. I got to come up with kind of the explanation you see on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Truly wonderful. I think they're based out of South Carolina, and it's just been a journey from there. They've helped me get on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think Walmart online has picked it up. There's a lot of bookstores across North Dakota and the US that have it. Really, if you Google search it, it's popping up everywhere. So that's just, it's been a long journey, and a lot of kind of, you learn things as you go. I definitely learned like the do's and don'ts, but it just was trial and error.
Most definitely. Well, last year you obviously read the book to lots of different audiences, and you've kind of continued that this year as well. What has been the most rewarding part of sharing this story with youth and people across North Dakota and the country, I should say?
Oh my goodness, I'm kind of struggling for words a little bit, because honestly, probably about a week or so ago, I had a mom of a young girl reach out to me on Facebook, and I was set to do a reading at one of our youth rodeo kind of event finals. But due to I have another kind of side hustle of helping as the marketing director for our junior high rodeo division here in North Dakota, I had something with that had come up, and so I kind of had to change gears and reschedule to another time to go up to that community. Well, they were competing in the youth rodeo finals, and that was their one and only time of being up there for the rest of the year. Well, come to find out, I guess this little girl had met me last year, and had, learned about the girl in lime green jeans, went on and had gotten like a junior princess or junior title of some sort here in North Dakota, and like idolizes the girl in lime green jeans, and was so like, the mom hadn't told her yet that I wasn't going to be there. And she's like, would you be able to send a video, of just saying that you'll catch her next time? Because she's like, I haven't told her and she's going to be devastated. And in that moment, I just kind of took a pause where you just think about everything that's happened and kind of where you started with the journey and where you hoped it would go and what you wanted to give from it. And in that moment, I caught myself grinning pretty darn big because I realized that this whole goal with the girl in lime green jeans and creating that confidence and passion in young women, rodeo queen related or not, came to fruition because that little girl felt inspired and looked up to the girl in lime green jeans. And in some way, she became an icon or kind of a thing where when you think about it, reminds you of something like golden arches and delicious fries kind of vibe. And so I think that's been the coolest thing with this journey for me. It's still reading a book, it's still sharing my story. I get vulnerable about it, and I'm honest that it's how I became a rodeo queen and that I lacked confidence for so long. But really to see young girls step forward and say, hey, because of you, I ran for a title, or, because of you, I tried this, or, oh my gosh, I met you here. And it was just so cool to meet you in person, that I'm just an average Joe who's had wonderful, remarkably opportunities that I don't think twice about, but to others are inspiring. So that's been, I think, my favorite part of the whole thing.
I think what's really powerful is so many individuals struggle with self confidence, especially at really formative ages like the youth that you're engaging with. But especially in rural communities, it's not often that you have a really strong female presence there to serve as a role model. And that's not the case in every area, of course. But what advice would you give someone who is struggling with self confidence based on what you've learned from your own personal journey?
I don't always want to just say find your passion, because sometimes that's a lot harder than it may seem. Because I mean, when I was in junior high, I never would have thought of being a rodeo queen, and then all of a sudden it came to fruition and I found that passion. So seeking it was tough. I was trialing and erroring. I was in sports and I loved those, but there wasn't something there. And so I think for those seeking confidence, I just would say, like, surround yourself with positive, uplifting people. And I know we say that all the time, but like, lean on your folks. Lean on, those friends that support you no matter what. Try new things. Had I not tried a new thing with being a rodeo queen, I wouldn't have found that passion. And truly, genuinely, I would not be where I am today without it. And so I think just try those new things, surround yourself with good, uplifting people, and know that quality is so much better than quantity. So I think that would kind of be my way to navigate through that, and to just know that what you bring to the table is important, and you may be different than those around you. I was one of very few kids that rodeoed in my school, and a lot of times got weird looks. Like, I was the country before country wasn't cool kind of and people gave me a lot of odd looks because I would wear boots and buckle my belt buckle and my belt and stuff to school. And now it's trendy and it's cool. And I think just even setting that aside, stand true in who you are and own it, and know that if you're different, that's okay. And like, copying is the best form of flattery. So
I that story is so funny to me because I vividly remember the first time I wore a pair of Twisted X shoes to school. And do you remember when everyone was walking around being like, "What are those?" for Crocs and stuff?
yes.
That was the joke all day, that I wore my pink Twisted X shoes to school. So I can relate to you on that front. Well, one of the strengths that I see so prominently in you is your ability to create relationships with other people. Obviously, you do that with youth quite frequently, but especially as a rodeo queen, and even beyond that, last year especially, we interacted with people of all ages and of all backgrounds and demographics. What advice would you give people when it comes to communication strategies and the relationship building element of really your job now and last year?
Great question. I recently had a conversation about this with my mom regarding kind of just interviewing and talking with people, because especially now, and even as a rodeo queen, we were chatting and visiting and meeting people we had never met before. We didn't know anything about their stories or anything about them. And the biggest thing that I go in with is that it's just a conversation. I always tell my interviewees, not only like, hey, we're just having a conversation, you can engage with me, but I really encourage them not to not look at the camera, but to just engage with me and have a conversation. And we just so happen to be, catching it on recording so I can refer back to it. And I've had a lot of interviewees actually over the past couple weeks say, your interview was so calm and I was at ease and I just felt like it was a conversation. And so that's really what I did last year as a rodeo queen too, is just I was personable and relatable. In most instances where it was appropriate, of course, professionalism is very important to me, but I was transparent and very vulnerable and relatable to folks because that's what we want nowadays. Why do we get on TikTok? Why do we get on Instagram or Facebook? We're seeing what everybody's doing, but those things that really resonate with us are those that are relatable, the things that we're going to share. Oh my gosh, this hit home for me today. That is what we most seek. And so that's what I strive to be, is just relatable, personable, genuine. Genuine connections, not just the hi, how's it going? I'm good. Okay, walk on. Like, no, truly, how's your mom? How's your dog? I saw on Facebook you got a new car. That's awesome. Kind of those things. So making it meaningful.
Most definitely. Well, that's a great segue into talking about your new job at KMOT. How did you learn about this opportunity and determine that it was a good fit for you?
I right after Miss Rodeo North Dakota and Miss Rodeo America, as a rodeo queen, you realize that you need to start making some dollars to help pay
No
for
joke.
kind of that stuff and all the clothes and everything that comes with it. And I was just kind of at a weird moment in life. I was still living at home and, I have a substitute teaching license. So I had, kind of was doing some stuff with our local school and ended up working as a para. But as much as I loved working with the youth and kind of being a resource for them, I realized that I was like, there's just something for me. Well, the school year ended, we went into the summertime, and I ended up being a commercial applicator for our local weed board. So I sprayed weeds all summer. I identified those noxious weeds in North Dakota and took
Doing the Lord's work.
Yes. And that was fun. I'd done that job many, many years ago. So it wasn't anything super new for me. And it was wonderful to have that transition. But as the season was coming to a close, and I really remembered, like, shoot, every job I've had so far after Miss Rodeo North Dakota has been seasonal. And that's just not going to work. And I just knew there was more out there for me. And I just kept really just trusting in the Lord's timing. And I just knew, I was like, there's got to be something. Well, I went to an event with our North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. They invited me down for National Day of the Cowboy to present my book and kind of help with some things. And I was speaking with one of the individuals there. And I just was transparent. I just said, to be honest, I'm really seeking a career in media, broadcasting, social media, something. If you hear of anything, because he spins in those realms, I said, could you please let me know? I knew that, going back to school is something that's on my agenda. But right now I was like, there's something out there for me. And I want to do the schooling on the side, kind of a thing. And sure enough, that was a Saturday. That Monday, he calls me and says, you need to call this gentleman. Within 15 minutes, I called that gentleman, who is the general manager for KFYR in Bismarck and for our KMOT station. We're sister stations. And he then directed me on to the guy below him, who also is kind of ahead of our stuff here in KMOT. And we did kind of a phone chat. And then from there, it led to a Zoom interview, which then turned into a week later, they called me and said, we'd like to offer you the job. And I think the biggest thing is through that process, I was a little bit taken aback because I never saw myself working in news, but I knew it was media and I knew it was talking with people. And I knew how my skills as a rodeo queen would come into action there. And so as much as I sometimes hesitated about, this is a huge jump for me, I felt this calming peace. And I knew that that was where the Lord was directing me and that I was meant to be there. And I just wrote it out. And when they called me and said, we'd like to offer you the job, I just kind of took a breath and was like, oh my gosh, we're really doing this. I didn't know what to expect. Of course, you start thinking of kind of all of your faults and maybe what makes you not qualified, but I tried to hone in on what I do bring to the table. And I think what was super full circle was that I've been interviewed by KMOT and KFYR probably 3 or 4 times. And so now to be on the other end, seeing the behind the scenes and now anchoring the newscast that I have been on many times has just been super, super cool, because this time last year I'd been interviewed by them and now I'm working for them. So he works in mysterious ways, but that's just kind of how it all very wonderfully came together.
That's really neat. Well, it's really easy in a period of transition to get overwhelmed and really start questioning whether or not things are going to work out. What would you say to someone who is going through a period of transition that is not quite sure what their next steps may be?
It's hard, but trust. And I'm kind of like speaking, as and a little bit of preaching to the choir kind of a thing, but trust in the timing and have peace and just know like that something's coming. And I think the biggest thing for me is in that time of transition where I didn't know what was coming for quite some time is I focused on the little things. And I tried to find just the goodness of where I was at. And as much as in some ways I wasn't quite where I was at career wise, I started to reflect on where I was at that moment. And I said, you know what? I feel like this is, my eyes are getting open to cherishing time with family. I missed out on a lot of time with family last year as a state title holder because I traveled and enjoyed every experience that was offered to me and missed out on some really cool things. So it was cool to be a part of all the birthdays. There was some weddings I got to attend, some things like that, that I reminded myself that I'm in this kind of period of waiting to not only hone in on being a better me, but spending that time with family and just kind of, slowly slowing down because as we had talked earlier, state queens and even rodeo queens in general, you run Mach 90. And now in this next chapter, I've kind of slowed down and been able to smell the roses. And I think that was some big lessons that were taught to me in that waiting time. And so I just encourage others to look kind of around you, survey, and just have very much a perspective of gratitude and see maybe what you're being pointed towards. Maybe there's a lesson in that waiting room that you're missing.
Yeah, especially in this era of media and content and seeing things in our face constantly that are telling us that we're behind. It's so difficult to sometimes take a step back and regain that perspective. And you and I both work in media, so we know how things cycle through, but still it can be hard to really just rest and let those things happen and also view your life as wow, now I'm just getting all like preachy, but to view your life as more than just your career, like a really all encompassing full circle experience. And sometimes it's really easy, especially as a high achiever, to only focus on what's happening on the career front. So I commend you for your patience, and it's been really fun to watch you in that realm. But talk about your transition to your new job. What has it been like? What have been some challenges, some exciting elements? I know it's pretty fresh, but give us the details.
Yes, so I've been with KMOT for a month as of yesterday. So September 10th, I started with them. And walking in those doors on the first day, I was ecstatic, as anyone would be to start a new job, but also one that is so, I guess, like for lack of better words, is so cool. Like I just was like, oh my gosh, I get to work in the news now. And I just was on cloud nine and kind of had that like starstruckness. But I think kind of some trials that I faced is just you're learning new things with the new job. And because I am a high achiever and I always am wanting to do my best, I kind of in the very beginning struggled with some of those new concepts, which naturally anybody would. And I really took it personal. And in some ways, I got concerned. I was like, am I in the wrong place? Like, I felt like I was at peace here and like, this is where I'm supposed to be. But like, am I failing? Because the minute that I falter, I always just assume failure. And I've tried to really work on that as a young adult is just that no, failing provides growth. And with that growth, you continue to be successful. And so I really just try to have a better perspective about that and just come in, not holding myself back. I joke a lot, well, I'm just an ag kid, who has a wonderful opportunity to work in media. But simply because I don't have a very huge, fancy media, news degree doesn't mean that I can't do my very best and work hard. And I've always been taught by my parents and by those around me that, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I've always taken pride in a hardworking work ethic. And so I've just really, I guess, honed in on that with this job is just known like, in a way that I'm going to prove myself and prove that I want to be here and I love working here and I will work hard no matter what, even when things get tough. And so that's kind of been a trial for me. And then I've just been kind of hitting the ground running. On my first day, I went to some interviews with my fellow reporter. From there, I started kind of editing my own scripts and making my own videos and things. And then it just kind of transitioned to the past couple of weeks. I've been going on what we call shoots or interviews by myself. The one day I did two by myself, shot my own videos and all that, typed up my own scripts. And then sent those over to our news director. And so that's been kind of fun just to watch, where I started in the beginning a month ago and that I was so worried I'd never be able to do it on my own, that I'd need my coworker to help me. And now I found that confidence and have picked up on all of the little tidbits. Of course, I'm still learning, absolutely. But that, and then, my position also entails being a fill-in anchor. And with our news director / main anchor needing to kind of just, now that we have some more staffing at our station, to be able to take some personal time and enjoy those, those things in life. And all of a sudden it came to fruition back in September. Lindsey, we're going to need you to anchor in October. I have some things that I have scheduled that I'd like to be a part of. And at first I was ecstatic, but also I was like, oh my gosh, this is like live. And I've never read a teleprompter in my life, all those things. And we just started practicing. And I really dug in that tool bag of my Rodeo Queen tools that I always lean on, and brought those out and just kept practicing and giving her heck. And last night, I debuted for the first time. We co-anchored the 6 o'clock. We do a 6 o'clock and a 10 o'clock news nightly, except for Saturdays. And we co-anchored together on the 6, and then on the 10, he said, I'm going to take off the training wheels and you're going to do it by yourself. And this evening I will anchor the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock by myself as the sole anchor, besides our sports guy. So it's been a crazy journey to think even just in a month. But I think also, like I had mentioned, the interview last year I had done with our news director and anchor as Miss Rodeo North Dakota. And now, I'm behind the camera on the other side. It's just been really full circle and cool. And he remembers that interview as well. And in some of my training, we referred back to that to kind of look at certain pieces of like when you put things together. And so that's been super amazing, just to see that. And
Yeah, that's so exciting. How do you think your ag roots contribute to your approach as a journalist?
That hard work, like that work ethic, and just being honest and fair, and all the things that really as ag kids that we're taught, hard work, responsibility, showing up, being on time, giving your best, and always knowing that what you put out there is important. I mean, I think about that in the relation to raising livestock and growing crops. Doing your best when you put those things out there. In return, yes, you yield high yields, but also you're making the world a better place because you're providing a great source of protein. You're providing crops that are made into cereals and lots of other wonderful oils and things that we use daily, that I just have really brought those into it. So that work ethic that I am so very proud of from growing up an ag kid, but also just the honesty, the integrity, the responsibility, the respect of those around me, the respect of the folks that I get the opportunity to share their story. I've had a lot of different, really unique stories that I've had the opportunity to share that I've just held with such high regard, and that everybody who has the courage to share that story with you, it's important to give it the grace that it deserves.
Most definitely. Well, you are certainly a role model to many young girls, but also your peers. I look up to you immensely. But when you're in a high achieving position, it's impossible to not have a few mentors that have helped you along the way. Who are some women or people that you admire that have influenced your journey?
I think, and you're going to think I just am pulling this out of like the sky, but I mean, wholeheartedly, I think you for sure, you're working in media with your podcast and just kind of your journey with that. And then knowing you last year as a state queen, and how a lot of the times you were a pillar for me, and we had a lot of fun memories together. And so I think you for sure, and kind of just keeping up with what you're doing and that growth, and that, what success can come from. But also I'm keeping it in the rodeo queen industry right now. It's like, that's what I've known the past 8 years, and that's just such a huge part of my life. But Kennedy Riggs, Miss Rodeo America 2023, I still keep up with what she's doing, and I know she's kind of transitioned from a couple things since being Miss Rodeo America, but I just love her grace, her poise, her style. Oh my gosh. She is like as genuine and as kind as it gets, and I just always enjoy the content she's sharing, and just really just who she is. And I guess I've always honed in on, how can I be kinder today? Or some style advice.
That's fun. We also share that. We both enjoy playing with style. That's a hoot.
Yes. So you two ladies for sure, but also just my mom. I mean,
Mhm.
she's been kind of that voice and that kind of push forward, when I've kind of faltered or second guessed myself, both as a rodeo queen, but also as just a professional individual as well, her and my dad. So those would kind of be my four, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, that gosh, I don't even know how to respond to that. That was so kind. Um, after serving as Miss Rodeo North Dakota, you haven't necessarily stepped away from rodeo by any stretch. Earlier, you alluded to your work with, is it the North Dakota Junior High Rodeo Association? Tell us a little bit about that and some of your involvement in rodeo now.
Yeah, so I serve currently as our marketing director for the North Dakota Junior High Rodeo Division, and so both of it entails both collecting sponsorships for our state finals, but also for kind of our social media and just really the marketing aspect of the North Dakota Junior High Rodeo Division. So that came to fruition prior to signing on with KMOT as a kind of side hustle. It is a part-time job, and I love it. It gets to hone in on being a part of rodeo and inspiring youth, especially through rodeo, but also that sponsorship, presenting yourself with poise, with professionalism to sponsors that I gained as a rodeo queen has been really fun to use those things. And a lot of the folks remember me from when I high school rodeoed or even as Miss Rodeo North Dakota. So those connections I felt like have just come so naturally. So that's been a position that I'm really enjoying and getting more involved in. I didn't junior high rodeo. And so to be a part of this organization and see what it does for our youth that then transition to high school, which we've had a lot of individuals go from high school to college. And then like Bridger Anderson, they're breaking out and doing great things at the
Mhm.
NFR. So that's been really awesome to be a part of. And I think job wise, that's kind of where I'm involved with rodeo still. I, of course, try to report on some rodeo happenings that happen in our area too with KMOT. But being involved with rodeo on kind of that more personal side, I do sit on a Rodeo Queen committee or board now with the White Earth Valley Saddle Club in White Earth, North Dakota. So that's been fun to give back and help that pageant grow. We've changed directorship and we've changed a lot of things about it just to stay with the times and to continue to grow.
Mhm.
And so I've enjoyed that. I've been attending a lot more rodeos now and watching, which has been the weirdest thing for me because I've always watched from the back of a horse and participated in the rodeo, carrying flags, whatever it may be. Now I get to watch the whole thing, and that, and I guess just kind of helping at any type of event that people need help at. I served as a flag boss at a couple local rodeos earlier this summer, and that's kind of it. I just wherever they kind of reach out and need help, I try to find a solution.
Very cool. Well, it's so fun to watch you hit your stride. I know you're starting a new career, so there's obviously going to be a lot of growth with that in the next year. But what are some goals you have for yourself as you look towards 2025 and whatever else is to come?
Absolutely. I love goals. I think they help us continue to grow, like you said, and remind ourselves to, not always seek something, but just to continue to grow and never be complacent. Some things I guess I'm kind of looking forward to in 2025 is just more growth with my career. Just there's more and more and more about it that I can learn and just providing better interviews, better videos, highlighting people better, becoming a better storyteller in a different kind of area than with my book. With my book, I would like to continue to grow my website. I do have a website I debuted back in July, and just continue to grow merch. I'm doing a lot more vendor shows. I know a lot of people are requesting a second or a sequel to the Girl in Lime Green Jeans, which I'm not alluding when it's happening, but I mean, there are some things in the works. I don't know if it's a direct sequel, but there will be some more, to that kind of brand. Also, just like I said, more merchandise and really, I think just those things. Now that I kind of have a little more time on my hands, I'm hoping to continue to keep my horse in shape. My sister's been doing a good job for me since I'm away from home and not able to have him in my backyard in town. um, but just hopefully breaking back out in the barrel racing, maybe even the rodeo community. And then eventually the goal is to get back into cowboy mounted shooting. And those are just some pretty loose goals. I think as a person gets closer to them, you get more specific or you
Mhm.
transition a little bit. But those are my three pretty loose goals that I'm just striving to be better and continue to grow all the things that I'm involved in.
For sure. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. What have we missed that you'd like people to know about Lindsay?
I really, and I think partially because we know each other so well, but I think that you covered really everything. The things that are important to me. I mean, we talked about morals, values, my book, my career, my tenure as Miss Rodeo North Dakota. So I really can't think of anything else.
Oh, awesome. Well, Lindsay, this has been such a treat. Thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with not only me, but the listeners of Breaking the Barrier. I'm so excited to follow along with your journey, and I'm just so appreciative that you joined us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Breaking the Barrier. As a reminder, all episodes are available to watch on YouTube if you so choose. Feel free to share with a friend and subscribe, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks.